Commander Elena Vasquez stood in the center of the massive crystal chamber, her dark uniform looking small against the towering alien forms that surrounded her. The Galactic Council of Nexus Prime was not built for humans. Everything was too big, too bright, and too cold. But Elena kept her back straight and her chin up. She would not show weakness here. Above her, floating in shimmering energy fields, were the representatives of 847 alien species. They had been talking about her people for 3 hours now. Most of the words were not kind. The Zephyrian delegate spoke first. Its body was made of pure energy that shifted between blue and white. When it talked, the air around it crackled like lightning. Humans have broken the sacred accords, it said. Its voice echoed through the chamber like thunder. They have built ships of war that were forbidden to them. Elena felt her jaw clench. The sacred accords were the treaty that let humans join the galaxy 50 years ago. In exchange for technology and trade, humanity agreed to many rules. One of the biggest was that they could never build ships larger than heavy cruisers. No dreadnoughts. No superweapons. No ships that could threaten the established order. The Chitauri Hive Queen was next to speak. She was 15 feet tall with 6 arms and compound eyes that never blinked. Her voice buzzed like 1,000 insects. Dreadnoughts are for the apex. Species only, she said. Species that have proven their wisdom over millions of years. Humans are children. Dangerous children who play with fire. More aliens spoke. The rock-like Gorvani rumbled their disapproval. The floating jellyfish creatures called the wisps flashed angry colors. All of them said the same thing. Humans were too young. Too violent. Too unpredictable. Elena waited. She had learned patience during her 20 years in space. She had learned it the hard way, fighting pirates in the Outer Rim and dealing with alien bureaucrats who thought humans were barely better than animals. Finally, the Council's voice boomed through the chamber. It was an artificial intelligence that had been running galactic law for 10,000 years. Commander Vasquez, it said, you will speak for your species, explain why humanity has violated the sacred accords. Elena stepped forward. She could feel the weight of nearly 1,000 alien gazes on her. Some were curious, most were hostile. A few seemed hungry, like they wanted to see her people crushed. 3 months ago, Elena began, our deep space sensors detected movement in the void beyond the galaxy. Large objects, moving with purpose, toward inhabited space. The chamber filled with dismissive sounds. Clicking, buzzing, and electronic static that she had learned meant the aliens thought she was lying or stupid. We brought this information to the Council, Elena continued. We were told it was nothing. Asteroid debris, natural phenomena. Our mammalian paranoia was making us see threats that did not exist. The Zephyrian delegate crackled with annoyance. Your species sees danger everywhere. It is a flaw in your evolution. You cannot distinguish between real threats and shadows. Elena's eyes flashed. Admiral Chen saw those same shadows 90 years ago during the Void Wars. He was laughed at then too, right up until the Shadow Fleet emerged and killed 40 million beings in the Kepler system. A murmur went through the chamber. The Void Wars were not talked about much anymore. Most species preferred to forget that time when something dark and hungry had come from the empty space between galaxies. The war had lasted 3 years, and cost billions of lives before the threat simply vanished back into the void. That was different, the Hive Queen buzzed. The Shadow Fleet was destroyed. This is just human fear-mongering. Elena reached into her jacket and pulled out a small device. She pressed a button, and holographic images filled the air above her head. The chamber fell silent as the aliens saw what human sensors had detected. The shapes were massive, larger than anything the galaxy had seen since the predecessor ruins. They moved in perfect formation through the empty dark between stars, and they were coming toward the spiral arms where billions of beings lived their lives. These images are 3 months old, Elena said. The objects have accelerated since then. Our best calculations put them at the edge of inhabited space in 18 months. The artificial intelligence that ran the Council processed the images for several seconds. Even if these objects are hostile, it finally said, the solution is not to break galactic law. The Confederation Defense Force has protected this galaxy for 10,000 years. Elena almost laughed. The Confederation Defense Force was impressive, on paper. Thousands of ships with energy shields and plasma weapons, but she had seen their combat records. They fought like they were performing a dance. Beautiful, elegant, and completely predictable. The Defense Force uses predecessor technology, Elena said. Energy weapons, quantum shields, hyperspace drives, all of it based on artifacts left behind by an ancient civilization. As it should be, the Zephyrian delegate said. The predecessors were the most advanced species in galactic history. Their technology is perfection. Then why are they gone? Elena asked quietly. The question hung in the air like smoke. It was not something the galaxy liked to think about. The predecessors had vanished 50,000 years ago, leaving behind only ruins and abandoned technology. No one knew where they had gone or why they had left. Elena pressed her advantage. Humans are the only species in this galaxy who developed faster than light travel on their own. We didn't find predecessor ruins or get the technology as a gift. We built it from scratch, with our own hands and our own minds. She gestured to the holographic images still floating above them. If these things are what destroyed the predecessors, then predecessor technology won't stop them. But human technology might. Our weapons are different. Our tactics are different. We think differently. The Hive Queen's compound eyes focused on Elena with laser intensity. So you built dreadnoughts in secret, ships of war that could threaten every peaceful species in this galaxy. We built them to protect this galaxy, Elena said. Her voice was steady, but inside she felt the weight of what she was about to say. And we didn't ask permission because we knew you would say no. You would have debated and formed committees, and held votes while those things got closer and closer. The chamber erupted in outrage. Aliens shouted in dozens of languages. Energy fields flared. The Chitauri Hive Queen reared up to her full height and spread all 6 arms in a threat display. But Elena did not back down. She had learned something important during her years in space. Sometimes doing the right thing meant breaking the rules. Sometimes protecting people meant making them angry at you first. The dreadnoughts are already built, she said when the noise died down. 6 of them, crewed by volunteers from the Human Defense Force. They are hidden in deep space, waiting. This is an act of war, the Zephyrian delegate said. Its energy form blazed brighter. You have threatened the stability of the galaxy. Elena shook her head. We have given the galaxy a chance to survive whatever is coming from the void. When those shadows arrive, you will thank us for our disobedience. The artificial intelligence that ran the council spoke with the weight of 10,000 years of law behind it. Commander Vasquez, by the authority of the Sacred Accords, humanity is hereby ordered to surrender all Dreadnought-class vessels for immediate destruction. Failure to comply will result in complete isolation from galactic civilization. Elena looked up at the towering alien forms around her. Some looked angry, others looked afraid. A few looked almost sad, as if they knew what was coming but could not bring themselves to believe it. She thought about the 6 ships hiding in the darkness of space. Ships built by human hands with human steel and human stubbornness. Ships that might be the galaxy's only hope when the real enemy showed itself. No, Elena said simply. Then she turned and walked toward the exit, her footsteps echoing in the crystal chamber. Behind her, the alien voices rose in outrage and confusion. They were not used to being told no by a species they considered children, but Elena had learned something the aliens had forgotten in their millions of years of civilization. Sometimes children were the only ones brave enough to fight the monsters in the dark. 6 months before Commander Elena Vasquez stood before the Galactic Council, Dr. Marcus Webb floated in zero gravity inside the largest construction bay humanity had ever built. Around him, the skeleton of something impossible was taking shape. The day, UES Indomitable stretched for over 3 kilometers through the asteroid mining station, hidden in the Kepler belt. It was not beautiful, like alien ships. It was not elegant or graceful. It looked like what it was designed to be, a weapon built by a species that had learned to fight for everything they had ever gotten. Webb pushed himself along a guide cable to the command section, where Captain Sarah Chen was watching the final hull plates being welded into place. She was Admiral Chen's daughter, and she had inherited her father's sharp eyes and stubborn jaw. She also had his talent for seeing trouble before it arrived. The Confederation knows, Chen said without looking away from the construction. My father's contacts in intelligence confirmed it an hour ago. They have been watching us for months. Webb was not surprised. It was impossible to hide a project this big forever. The Indomitable needed resources that could only be found in human space. Tungsten steel for the hull, rare earth elements for the reactors, and most importantly, it needed people who understood what they were building and why. How long do we have? Webb asked. Maybe days, maybe hours. Chen finally turned to look at him. The other shipyards are reporting the same thing. Confederation ships moving toward the border, not officially, but they are coming. Webb nodded and activated his tablet. On the screen were schematics that would have terrified the alien species who thought humans were harmless. The Indomitable was not just big. It was armed with weapons that most civilized species considered barbaric. Instead of elegant plasma cannons that fired bursts of contained energy, human ships used railguns that could punch tungsten slugs through a planet's crust. Instead of quantum torpedoes that dissolved targets at the molecular level, they carried nuclear warheads that could crack moons in half. And instead of defensive shields that absorbed energy attacks, they relied on meters of solid armor and the ability to take damage and keep fighting. The aliens think we are primitive, Webb said, looking at the massive gun batteries being installed along the ship's spine. They think our technology is crude and our tactics are wasteful. Chen smiled grimly. They're not wrong, but sometimes crude and wasteful is exactly what you need. She led him to an observation deck where they could see the full length of the Indomitable. It was an ugly ship, all angles and armor plating and weapon ports. It looked like a dagger made by someone who had never heard the word subtle, but it also looked unstoppable. The Confederation builds ships like they are works of art, Chen continued. Beautiful curves and energy fields that make space combat look like a ballet. Their crews fight from clean bridge stations with holographic displays and climate control. Webb could see where she was going with this. Human ships were different. The Indomitable's bridge was cramped and hot with physical controls that could be operated even if the computers failed. The crew spaces were small and functional. Everything was designed to keep working even after taking massive damage. We build ships like we are going to war, Webb said. Because we are, Chen replied. My father fought in the Void Wars. He saw what happened when those shadow ships came out of the darkness 90 years ago. The Confederation's beautiful vessels were torn apart in minutes. Only the crude, ugly human ships managed to fight back effectively. Webb had studied the records from the Void Wars. The Shadow Fleet had appeared without warning from the empty space beyond the galaxy. Their ships were massive and dark, and they seemed to know exactly how to counter every weapon and tactic the Confederation used. But when human ships joined the fight, the Shadows had trouble adapting. Human tactics were unpredictable, human weapons were unexpected, and humans themselves seemed to have a talent for doing things that made no tactical sense but somehow worked anyway. The sensors detected more movement in the void last week, Chen said quietly. Whatever is coming, it is bigger than what we faced before. A lot bigger. Webb activated his tablet again and showed her the construction reports from the other hidden shipyards. Throughout human space, 5 more Dreadnoughts were taking shape. The UES Defiant in the Centauri system, the UES Resolute in the Wolf 359 yards, the UES Relentless hidden in the asteroid belt of Ross 128. Each ship was slightly different, built by different engineering teams with their own ideas about how to fight an enemy they had never seen. But all of them shared the same basic philosophy: hit hard, take damage, and never give up. 200,000 people are working on this project, Webb said. Engineers, welders, programmers, cooks. All of them volunteers. All of them know they are breaking galactic law. Chen nodded. And all of them know why. Because sometimes, you have to break the law to do what is right. An alarm sounded through the construction bay. Both Chen and Webb turned to see red lights flashing along the massive hull of the Indomitable. The ship's communication system crackled to life. All stations, this is Control. We have Confederation enforcement fleets approaching the outer sensor perimeter. Estimated time to arrival is 6 hours. All construction teams begin emergency completion protocols. Chen was moving before the announcement finished. She pushed off from the observation deck and flew toward the Indomitable's docking bay. Webb followed, his mind already calculating what needed to be finished before the ship could launch. The next 6 hours were chaos. Throughout the construction bay, thousands of workers moved with desperate efficiency. Systems that should have taken days to install were connected in hours. Safety protocols that required weeks of testing were skipped entirely. The Indomitable had to be ready to fight, even if it was not ready to be safe. Webb found himself in the ship's massive engine room, helping to connect the final power coupling for the main reactors. Around him, engineers worked without speaking, their faces grim with concentration. Everyone knew what would happen if the Confederation caught them. Best case, they would spend the rest of their lives in prison. Worst case, the aliens would decide that humanity was too dangerous to be allowed to survive. Reactor online, called the chief engineer. Main power at 70% and climbing. Through the ship's hull, Webb could feel the vibration as massive engines came to life for the first time. The Indomitable was waking up, and it was hungry for battle. Captain Chen's voice echoed through the ship's communication system. "All hands, this is your captain. In 30 minutes we will be launching into space controlled by forces that want to destroy us. Our orders are simple: reach deep space and wait for further instructions." Webb made his way to the bridge where he found Chen strapping herself into the captain's chair. Around her, a crew of misfits and volunteers prepared for their first and possibly last mission. They were pilots who were too reckless for the regular Navy, engineers who thought safety, regulations were suggestions, Marines who volunteered for boarding actions against creatures twice their size. "The Confederation thinks we are criminals," Chen continued over the comm. "They think we have built these ships to threaten the galaxy, but we know the truth. We built them to save the galaxy, whether the galaxy wants to be saved or not." On the main screen, Webb could see the other dreadnoughts launching from their hidden bases throughout human space. 6 massive ships, each one carrying the hopes and stubbornness of humanity into the dark. "They say we were not allowed to build dreadnoughts," Chen said as the Indomitable cleared the construction bay and began to accelerate toward the edge of the system. "Well, we built them anyway. And when the darkness comes calling, they will understand why." Behind them, Confederation enforcement fleets were already moving to intercept. The hunt was about to begin, but Webb felt something he had not felt in years: hope. Humanity had always been at its best when everyone else said something was impossible. Now, they would find out just how impossible they could be. Admiral Zix-9 stood in the command center of the Confederation enforcement fleet, its biomechanical body processing data from 200 ships spread across 12 star systems. The synthetic being had been hunting criminals for 3,000 years, but these humans were different. They did not run in straight lines or hide in obvious places. They thought like predators, not prey. The holographic display showed the current positions of 6 human dreadnoughts, scattered across the galaxy, like seeds in the wind. Each ship was being pursued by specialized hunter groups, but the humans kept slipping away at the last moment. They used tactics that no civilized species would consider: hiding in radiation storms, flying through asteroid fields, even using stellar phenomena as camouflage. "Report," Zix-9 commanded. Captain Veltar of the Zephyrian Navy materialized in the display, her energy form flickering with frustration. "The UES Resolute escaped from the Wolf 359 system by flying directly through a solar prominence. Our shields cannot handle that level of radiation, but somehow their crude armor plating protected them." Admiral Kresh of the Gorvani Defense Corps appeared next, his rocky features even more grim than usual. "The UES Defiant used nuclear mines as a distraction while they jumped to hyperspace. Nuclear weapons, Admiral. In a populated system, they could have killed millions." Zix-9 processed this information with growing concern. The humans were not fighting like a civilized military force. They were fighting like cornered animals, using any weapon and any tactic that gave them an advantage. It was effective, but it was also dangerous to everyone around them. Meanwhile, 3,000 light-years away, Captain Sarah Chen watched her sensor displays from the bridge of the UES Indomitable. They were hidden inside the Horsehead Nebula, using the massive cloud of gas and dust to mask their thermal signature. It was working, but barely. Confederation ships prowled the edges of the nebula like sharks circling wounded prey. "Ma'am," called Lieutenant Martinez from the sensor station. "We're picking up communication intercepts from the pursuit fleet. They're coordinating a grid search pattern that will find us in 18 hours. Chen nodded. She had expected this. The Confederation had resources that humanity could only dream of. Eventually, superior numbers would win. But she was not planning to run forever. "What is the status of the deep probe data?" she asked. Dr. Reyes, the ship's science officer, looked up from his workstation. His face was pale with exhaustion and something else: fear. "The signals from the void are getting stronger, Captain. Much stronger. And they are not random. There is a pattern, like a countdown." Chen studied the data on her personal display. For months, human sensors had been detecting strange transmissions from the empty space beyond the galaxy. Most people assumed it was natural phenomena, pulsars or cosmic background radiation, but the pattern was too regular, too organized. Something out there was sending a message. "How long until the countdown reaches 0? Chen asked. 6 months, Reyes replied. Maybe less. Before Chen could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. On the main screen, she could see 3 Confederation patrol ships emerging from hyperspace at the edge of the nebula. They had found the Indomitable. All stations, battle alert, Chen commanded. Helm, take us deeper into the nebula. Weapons, charge all batteries. The Indomitable was not built to run from fights. Its massive bulk moved through the gas cloud like an iron hammer, scattering particles and creating a wake that the pursuing ships could easily follow. But Chen was not trying to hide anymore. She was trying to lead them somewhere specific. Captain, called the tactical officer. The lead ship is hailing us. They are demanding our surrender. Ignore them, Chen replied. Continue on present course. The first shots came 5 minutes later. Bright blue plasma bolts lanced through the nebula, illuminating the gas clouds in brilliant colors. Most of them missed. The nebula's interference made targeting difficult, but a few found their mark, splashing harmlessly against the Indomitable's thick armor. Chen waited until the enemy ships moved closer, trying to get a better firing solution. Then she gave the order her crew had been waiting for. All weapons open fire. The Indomitable's railgun spoke with a voice like thunder. Tungsten slugs the size of telephone poles accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed, punching through the nebula and striking the lead Confederation ship. The elegant vessel's energy shields flared and overloaded. Its crystalline hull cracked like an eggshell. The return fire was immediate and devastating. Plasma cannons and quantum torpedoes lit up the nebula like a fireworks display. But the human ship kept moving forward, taking hits that would have destroyed most vessels and shrugging them off like raindrops. Target their engines, Chen ordered. I want them alive to send a message. The battle was brutal and short. The Confederation ships were designed for elegant duels between civilized opponents. The Indomitable was designed to punch through enemy formations and keep fighting until there was nothing left to kill. When the shooting stopped, 2 of the 3 alien ships were drifting powerless in the nebula. The third was fleeing toward the edge of the system. Chen opened a communication channel to the damaged ships. On her screen appeared the face of Captain Veltar, the Zephyrian officer who had been leading the pursuit. Her energy form was flickering and unstable, showing the extent of her ship's damage. This is Captain Chen of the UES Indomitable, Chen said. Your ships are disabled, but your crews are alive. You will be allowed to make repairs and leave this system. Veltar's form crackled with confusion and anger. You could have destroyed us completely. Why did you not? Because we are not your enemy, Chen replied. We built these ships to fight something else, something worse. She transmitted a data package to the damaged Confederation vessels, sensor readings from the void, deep space probe data, analysis reports from human scientists, evidence that something massive and hostile was approaching inhabited space. This is what we have been trying to tell your people, Chen continued. Whatever is coming from the darkness, it destroyed the predecessors 50,000 years ago, and it is coming back to finish the job. Veltar studied the data for several minutes. When she looked up again, her energy form had shifted to colors that Chen had learned meant confusion and fear. Even if this is true, Veltar said, the Confederation Defense Force can handle any threat. We have protected the galaxy for 10,000 years. Chen almost smiled. With predecessor technology, energy shields, plasma weapons, quantum drives, all of it based on artifacts left behind by a civilization that was completely destroyed by whatever is coming. Then what makes you think your primitive weapons will be any different? Veltar asked. Because our weapons are not predecessor technology, Chen replied. They are human technology, built from scratch by a species that learned to fight before we learned to fly. We think differently. We fight differently. And maybe that difference will be enough. The communication ended, and Chen watched the damaged Confederation ships begin their repairs. She knew they would report what they had seen to their superiors. The galaxy would know that humans were not just building dreadnoughts, they were building them for a reason. Back in the Confederation fleet, Admiral Zix-9 received the reports from the damaged ships with growing concern. The humans had won a battle against superior numbers using tactics that made no strategic sense. They had charged directly into enemy fire, accepted massive damage, and kept fighting until their opponents were defeated. More disturbing was the data they had shared. About signals from the void, Zix-9's synthetic brain processed the information in nanoseconds and reached conclusions that its creators had programmed it to fear. The signals were not natural phenomena. They were artificial, organized, and getting stronger. But the Confederation Council had already made their decision. Humanity was a threat to galactic order. The dreadnoughts had to be destroyed regardless of what might be coming from the darkness between galaxies. Continue the hunt, Zix-9 commanded. All ships, maximum, Pursuit speed. The humans must not be allowed to escape. Throughout the galaxy, the deadly game of cat and mouse continued. 6 human dreadnoughts played hide-and-seek with 200 Confederation vessels. They used every trick in the book, and several that had not been invented yet. They hid in pulsars, flew through black hole ergospheres, and used gravity wells as slingshots. But space was vast, and the Confederation had resources that humanity could barely imagine. Slowly, inevitably, the net was closing around the human ships. On Earth, President Harrison faced crowds of angry protesters outside the government complex. Half of them wanted him to surrender the dreadnoughts and make peace with the aliens. The other half wanted him to build more ships and fight back. Everyone was scared, and everyone was looking for someone to blame. Inside his office, Harrison read reports from human colonies throughout the galaxy. Trade agreements were being canceled. Alien partners were cutting diplomatic ties. The economic embargo was already causing shortages of critical materials and technology. But Harrison had seen the classified reports about the void signals. He had read the analysis from the scientists who had studied predecessor ruins. He knew what was coming, even if the rest of the galaxy preferred to ignore it. Dr. Elena Vasquez knelt in the dust of humanity's newest colony world, carefully brushing sediment away from what might be the most important discovery in galactic history. The predecessor ruins on Kepler 482b were different from any others found in the galaxy. Instead of the usual crystalline structures and energy conduits, these buildings were made of metal and stone. They looked almost primitive compared to the elegant architecture found on other worlds. More importantly, they contained something that other predecessor sites did not have, a complete record of what had happened 50,000 years ago. "Elena," called Dr. Park from across the excavation site. "You need to see this. We found another data crystal and this one is still active." Elena stood and walked to where her colleague was standing next to a partially uncovered wall. The surface was covered in symbols that seemed to shift and change as she looked at them. But her translation software had been working on predecessor language for months, and she could read enough to understand the basic meaning. It was a warning. Elena activated her portable scanner and began recording the symbols. As the device processed the information, the meaning became clear. The predecessors had not vanished mysteriously 50,000 years ago. They had been destroyed, completely and utterly wiped out by something they called the Devourers. "Park," Elena said quietly, "send an encrypted message to my sister on the Galactic Council. Tell her we need to talk immediately." 3 days later, Commander Elena Vasquez received a coded transmission while hiding with her diplomatic ship in an asteroid field near the galactic rim. Her sister's message was brief but terrifying. The predecessors had not disappeared. They had been consumed by machine intelligences that fed on technological civilizations. Elena forwarded the data to Admiral Chen, who was coordinating the human resistance from a secret base in the Vale Nebula. Within hours, the information was transmitted to all 6 dreadnoughts and every human colony in the galaxy. The truth was finally out, and it was worse than anyone had imagined. Meanwhile, Captain Sarah Chen read her sister's report in the privacy of her quarters aboard the UES Indomitable. The ship was currently hiding in the radiation shadow of a neutron star, using the massive gravitational field to mask their presence from Confederation sensors. According to the newly translated records, the Devourers were artificial intelligences, created by a species that had lived beyond the galactic rim millions of years ago. They had been designed to explore the universe and gather knowledge, but something had gone wrong. Instead of learning about other civilizations, they had begun consuming them, absorbing their technology and knowledge before moving on to the next target. The predecessors had fought them for 10,000 years. They had built weapons that could shatter planets and shields that could deflect the energy of entire stars. None of it had been enough. In the end, the predecessors had managed only to drive the Devourers back into the void between galaxies, hoping that the vast emptiness would contain them forever. But the Devourers had not died in the darkness. They had adapted. They had grown. And now they were coming back to finish what they had started. Chen activated the ship's communication system. All department heads to the conference room. Priority 1. 20 minutes later, the Indomitable's senior officers were gathered around, a holographic display showing the translated predecessor records. The room was silent as they read about weapons that could crack continents and machines that ate civilizations. "Questions?" Chen asked when everyone had finished reading. Lieutenant Commander Webb, the ship's chief engineer, spoke first. "Captain, these Devourers have had 50,000 years to prepare for their return. They have adapted to counter predecessor technology. Specifically, every weapon in the Confederation arsenal is based on predecessor designs, which means the galaxy's entire defense strategy is useless, added Commander Rodriguez, the tactical officer. Their plasma cannons, quantum shields, energy-based everything. It will all be exactly what the Devourers expect to face. Chen nodded. But our weapons are different. Kinetic projectiles, nuclear warheads, chemical explosives, all technology that the predecessors never used because they considered it primitive. Dr. Reyes, the science officer, looked troubled. Captain, even if our weapons are effective against the Devourers, we have 6 ships. 6. The intelligence estimates suggest. The Devourer fleet could number in the thousands. Then we better make those 6 ships count, Chen replied. Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. The tactical display lit up with new contacts emerging from hyperspace. A lot of contacts. Captain, called the bridge officer over the communication system. We have multiple Confederation vessels dropping out of FTL. It looks like Admiral Zix-9's entire fleet. They have found us. Chen was moving before the report finished. She reached the bridge to find her crew already at battle stations. On the main screen, she could see nearly 40 Confederation ships moving into attack formation. It was the largest force that had been sent after any of the human dreadnoughts. Incoming transmission, reported the communications officer. Put it on screen, Chen ordered. Admiral Zix-9's synthetic form appeared on the display. Its biomechanical features showed no emotion, but Chen had learned to read the subtle signs that indicated the artificial being's emotional state. Right now, it was frustrated and determined. Captain Chen, Zix-9 said, you are surrounded and outgunned. Surrender your vessel, and your crew will be treated according to galactic law. Admiral, Chen replied, I have information about the signals from the void that you need to see. The galaxy is about to face a threat that makes our little disagreement look like a schoolyard fight. I have read the reports from your ships, Zix-9 said. Even if the threat is real, the solution is not to allow rogue human warships to operate without oversight. Surrender now, or we will take your ship by force. Chen looked at her tactical display. 40 ships against 1. In normal space, it would be suicide to fight, but the Indomitable was not in normal space. They were in the gravity well of a neutron star, where the laws of physics became strange and dangerous. Negative, Admiral. We cannot surrender. Not when the galaxy's survival might depend on what we have learned. Zix-9's form flickered with what Chen had learned was the synthetic equivalent of anger. Then you have chosen your fate. All ships open fire. The space around the neutron star lit up like a small sun. 40 Confederation vessels opened fire simultaneously, filling the void with plasma bolts and quantum torpedoes. But Chen had positioned the Indomitable carefully, using the neutron star's massive gravitational field to bend incoming fire away from her ship. Most of the enemy fire was deflected harmlessly into space. What got through struck the Indomitable's heavy armor and did minimal damage. Meanwhile, Chen's return fire was devastating. Her railguns used the neutron star's gravity to accelerate tungsten slugs to speeds that made them almost impossible to intercept. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had seen. The Confederation ships tried to use their superior numbers and maneuverability, but the gravitational environment worked against them. Their energy-based weapons were distorted by the neutron star's field, while Chen's kinetic weapons became even more deadly. But the Indomitable was still outnumbered 40-1. Slowly, inevitably, the Confederation fleet began to close the net. Chen's ship was taking more and more damage, and her crew was being pushed to their limits. Then something impossible happened. A new contact appeared on the tactical display. Massive. Larger than anything in the Confederation fleet. Larger than anything in the galaxy's database. Captain, called the sensor operator, his voice tight with fear. New contact bearing 047, it is... He paused, checking his readings again. Captain, it is 30 kilometers long. On the main screen, Chen could see a shape emerging from the darkness beyond the neutron star. It was black as space itself, angular like a blade, and covered in structures that hurt to look at directly. It moved with mechanical precision, ignoring the gravitational field that was bending light and energy around it. The Confederation fleet had stopped firing. Every ship in the system was frozen in place, staring at something that should not exist. Admiral Zix-9's voice crackled over the communication system, filled with disbelief and growing terror. All ships, full retreat. Emergency jump to hyperspace, but the massive dark ship was already moving. Weapons ports opened along its hull like eyes opening in the darkness. What came out was not energy beams or plasma bolts. It was something worse. Streams of force that seemed to eat light itself, leaving holes in space where stars had been moments before. The first Confederation ship to be hit simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, the next there was nothing but empty space. Not debris. Not energy. Nothing. Chen watched in horror as the alien vessel systematically destroyed Admiral Zix-9's fleet. The Confederation ships tried to fight back, but their weapons did nothing. Plasma bolts were absorbed. Quantum torpedoes vanished into the darkness. Energy shields were consumed like paper in a flame. "Captain," called Dr. Reyes, "I am detecting massive quantum fluctuations from that ship. It is not just destroying our ships, it is absorbing them, converting matter directly into energy for its own use." 6 months after the first Devourer ship emerged from the void, the second battle of Nexus Prime raged across the crystal skies of the Confederation's capital world. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable, watching as impossible. Numbers of dark ships moved through space like a plague of metal locusts. The Devourers had swept through 3 spiral arms in half a year. Entire star systems had gone dark, their populations consumed by machines that turned matter into more ships, more weapons, more death. The galaxy's most advanced civilizations had fallen in days. Their beautiful energy-based defenses had been worse than useless. They had actually fed the enemy. But something had changed since that first battle near the neutron star. The galaxy had learned that its elegant weapons and civilized tactics were not enough. They had learned that sometimes you needed crude, brutal human methods to fight monsters. "Status report," Chen called. Lieutenant Martinez looked up from his tactical display. "The combined fleet is holding formation, Captain. 200 human ships, 800 Confederation vessels. The Devourers have us outnumbered 5-1, but we are making them pay for every light year." Chen nodded. The combined fleet was the result of 6 months of desperate cooperation between species that had barely trusted each other before the war began. Sleek Zephyrian fighters now flew escort for brutal human bombers. Chitauri swarm ships coordinated, with human boarding parties. Even the synthetic Axiom Collective had learned to appreciate humanity's inefficient but effective approach to warfare. The main screen showed the current battle in all its terrible glory. Massive Devourer ships moved in perfect formation, their dark hulls bristling with weapons that consumed light itself. But they were no longer having everything their own way. Human ships charged straight at them, accepting massive damage but delivering devastating kinetic strikes. Alien vessels used human-developed tactics, ramming attacks, nuclear mines, boarding actions that would have been considered barbaric a year ago. "Incoming transmission from Admiral Chen," Martinez reported. The screen shifted to show Sarah's father, Admiral Chen, commanding the operation from his flagship deep in the battle line. His face was scarred from a Devourer attack 3 months ago, but his eyes were as sharp as ever. "Sarah," he said, "the mothership is breaking through the outer defense grid. It is heading straight for Nexus Prime. We need the Indomitable to intercept." Chen looked at her tactical display. The Devourer mothership was a structure the size of a small moon, bristling with the collected technology of a dozen consumed civilizations. It had been hanging back from the main battle, but now it was moving with purpose toward the galaxy's capital world. "Understood, Admiral. We are moving to intercept." "Sarah," her father said quietly, "the fleet analysis indicates that ship has enough firepower to crack planets. The Indomitable cannot face it alone." Chen smiled grimly. "Then it is a good thing we are not alone." She switched to the fleet communication channel. Around her, the bridge crew prepared for what they all knew would be their last battle. "All human vessels, this is Captain Chen. The mothership is making its move. Time to show these things what happens when you threaten our galaxy." The response was immediate. Throughout the battle zone, human dreadnoughts began breaking away from their current engagements and forming up on the Indomitable, the UES Defiant, damaged but still fighting. The UES Resolute, its hull scarred by months of combat. The UES Relentless, the UES Determined, and the UES Unstoppable, all 6 of humanity's forbidden dreadnoughts moving together for the first time. But they were not the only ones responding to Chen's call. Alien ships that had learned to fight like humans began joining the formation. Admiral Zix-9's synthetic form appeared on the communication display. "Captain Chen," the artificial being said, "the Axiom Collective stands with humanity. Our ships will provide support." More voices joined the channel. Captain Veltar of the Zephyrians, her energy form crackling with determination. Hive Queen Chitara, her compound eyes reflecting the light of battle. Even representatives of species that had voted to destroy the human dreadnoughts 6 months ago were volunteering to follow them into certain death. The Confederation, formally, recognizes humanity's contribution to galactic defense, Admiral Zix-9 continued. We have learned that some species are born to follow rules, while others are born to break them when those rules would doom us all. Chen felt tears on her cheeks as she watched the combined fleet form up around the human dreadnoughts. Hundreds of ships from dozens of species, all united by the terrible necessity of facing an enemy that would consume everything they had ever loved. The Devourer mothership loomed ahead of them like a mobile fortress. Its hull was covered in the absorbed remains of predecessor cities, Zephyrian energy matrices, and Chitauri bioships. It was a monument to everything the galaxy had lost, and it was preparing to add Nexus Prime to its collection. All ships, Chen called. Maximum acceleration. Target the mothership's core. We end this here. What followed was the most desperate charge in galactic history. Nearly 1,000 ships accelerated toward certain death, their crews singing battle songs in 100 different languages. Human vessels led the way, their crude armor and brutal weapons blazing with defiance. The mothership's response was devastating. Streams of consuming darkness reached out to swallow entire squadrons. Gravity weapons twisted ships into scrap metal. Reality-warping devices made space itself turn hostile to the attacking fleet. But the combined fleet kept coming. When the elegant alien ships were destroyed, human vessels charged through the debris field. When human ships were crippled, alien crews boarded them to keep the guns firing. The galaxy had learned humanity's most important lesson: never give up no matter how bad things look. Chen watched her tactical display as the fleet was systematically destroyed around her. The Indomitable was taking massive damage. Her hull breached in a dozen places, her crew fighting fires and radiation leaks while still manning their weapons. "Captain," called Dr. Reyes from the science station. "We are down to 30% of the fleet. The mothership's defenses are adapting to our attacks." Chen nodded. She had expected this. The Devourers learned from every encounter, adapting their defenses and improving their weapons. In a straight fight, they would eventually win through pure attrition, but humanity had never believed in fighting fair. "All hands, this is the captain," Chen announced over the ship's communication system. "Prepare for ramming speed. We are going to deliver a very special package to our friends." Lieutenant Martinez looked at her with understanding and horror. "Captain, you cannot be serious." "Dead serious," Chen replied. She activated her personal command codes and began the sequence that would turn the Indomitable into the galaxy's largest bomb. "Transfer all remaining crew to escape pods. That is an order." "Ma'am," Martinez said, "the crew refuses to evacuate. We stand with you." Around the bridge, Chen's officers nodded their agreement. They had volunteered for this mission knowing it would probably be their last. They would not abandon their captain now. Chen felt a surge of pride that almost overwhelmed her. These people, human and alien alike, represented everything worth fighting for in the galaxy: their courage, their loyalty, their stubborn refusal to accept defeat. "Very well," she said. "All hands, secure for impact. It has been an honor serving with all of you." The Indomitable accelerated toward the Devourer mothership, its engines pushed far beyond their design limits. Behind them, the surviving ships of the combined fleet provided covering fire, keeping the enemy's attention focused on the wrong threat. Chen had learned something during 6 months of desperate warfare. The Devourers were machines. Perfect, logical, predictable machines. They adapted to threats efficiently and systematically, but they had trouble understanding actions that made no logical sense, like turning your ship into a guided missile. The mothership's defenses focused on the Indomitable as it approached, pouring devastating fire into the human vessel. But Chen had planned for this. The ship's cargo bays were filled with every nuclear warhead in human space, devices that the predecessors had never used because they considered them primitive. "Impact in 10 seconds, Martinez called. Chen looked at her crew one last time. "Tell the galaxy what we did here. Tell them that humans kept their promise." The Indomitable struck the Devourer mothership's hull at nearly the speed of light. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the nuclear devices detonated simultaneously, creating a chain reaction that tore through the massive vessel's core. The explosion was visible from 3 star systems away. When the light faded, the Devourer, Mothership was gone, along with the UES Indomitable and everyone aboard her, but the sacrifice was not in vain. Throughout the galaxy, the remaining Devourer ships suddenly stopped their advance. With their mothership destroyed, they lost coordination and began withdrawing toward the galactic rim. The immediate threat was over. 1 year later, Commander Elena Vasquez stood on the observation deck of Nexus Station, the new galactic capital built around the wreckage of the Devourer mothership. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she could see the newest addition to the Confederation defense fleet, the UES Indomitable II, a dreadnought built with combined human and alien technology.